Hello, and thanks very much for the opportunity to contribute to this meeting. My name is Adrian Smith. I was a laboratory animal veterinarian for 30 years. And for the last 15 years, I've been secretary of Norikope. That's the Norwegian consensus platform for the 3 R's of replacement, reduction, and refinement of animal research. I'm also lead author of the Prepare Guidelines for Planning Animal Experiments, which I'll speak more about later. I have quite a lot of slides, but you can download a PDF of all of them from the address on the screen. That's norikope.no/ASAB. The title of my presentation may appear provocative, but there is increasing concern also among scientists that animal studies are suboptimal. So here's my list of things that we need to and can improve. First of all, the validity of the data from the animals. So we are sure we're registering an effect of the treatment and not of the stressful conditions under which the animals live. This will lead to more reproducible and translatable data. And we need to optimize animal welfare, both for ethical and scientific reasons. Happy animals will give more valid data. And we need to address health and safety issues. And this means that scientists must involve the animal facility in their plans from day one. We need a good culture of care in the research environment, where everyone feels they can air their views without threat of reprisals. And we have a moral obligation to communicate our experiences in developing best practice to the scientific community. And all this will lead to more ethically defensible animal research. So how do other professionals achieve these goals of precision, reproducibility, translatability, and safety? We've gained a lot of inspiration from the aviation industry. Imagine you're the captain of an Airbus A320 with 150 passengers on board. Just after takeoff, you fly into a flock of birds. This happens relatively often. But let's say in your case, these are large birds that cause both engines to fail. What do you do? Here is the transcript of the conversation in the cockpit between the captain and first officer when exactly this happened in New York in 2009. During the minute and a half before the bird strike, the plane lifts normally from the runway and the captain completes his after takeoff checklist. Then 3 seconds later, we hear birds and whoa from the cockpit. It's what happens next that's really interesting for us. Within 16 seconds, the captain says, get the QRH, that's the quick reference handbook for failure of both engines. And then he informs air traffic control of the situation. So the captain clearly saw the value of checklists, and he, the first officer, and the cabin staff used several of these in the remaining 3 minutes they had in the air before they landed in the cold January water of the Hudson River. And as you probably know, all survived. Pilots tell me that even on short routine flights in Europe, where they have flown many times before, they use 10 or 15 checklists. And these reduce the risk of them forgetting anything. They encourage cooperation and cross-checking. And they make sure that everyone has the same perception of the situation and that tasks are carried out in the correct sequence and at the correct time. By doing this, they achieve reproducibility. They manage to land on the same place on the runway each time, and they do this in a complex and variable environment. We've made a short film comparing aviation and animal research. Similar inspiration from the aviation and building industries lies behind surgical safety checklists that were developed for the World Health Organization under the leadership of Atul Gawande, whose book I really can recommend. So, are we pure amateurs by comparison, despite all our scientific publications? My personal view is as follows, based on experience from planning and conducting animal research and holding courses in laboratory animal science since the early 1980s, and from managing accredited laboratory animal facilities. One of the greatest challenges to validity and reproducibility lies in the animals that the scientists use and the way they use them. And I suspect many scientists are unaware of the size of this challenge, or they assume that the animal facility is dealing with it. Here are some of the issues that are frequently mentioned by scientists when discussing the reproducibility crisis. Many of them concern unintentional bias that leads to invalid data. We've made a website with more information about these and other concerns. Here is an excellent paper on the subject describing these issues and how to tackle them. As a lab animal veterinarian, I would like, in addition, to see more emphasis on the issues related to the animals and to the facility in which they're housed, as these also affect the outcome of an experiment. So what I'm hoping for is more crosstalk between, on the one hand, scientists who maybe are more familiar with what you might call the more mathematical issues of experimental design, and on the other hand, the animal care staff, who are highly aware of the variation in and between animals and the effects of the facility and experimental procedures on them. Here's a simple example. A scientist wishing to compare blood glucose levels in 2 strains of mice fed 2 different diets will naturally be most focused on the blood samples and how to analyze them. The mice, on the other hand, would experience a large number of events in their lives which may influence their blood glucose levels far more than the differences between the 2 feeds. We've known about many of these influences for many years, as this book from 1994 demonstrates. So, in my opinion, a well-planned experiment should have a number of characteristics. There should be a written contract between the facility and the research group, specifying who has responsibility for data collection at each phase of the study, so nothing is forgotten and the costs are clarified in advance. There should be some form of master plan visualizing all the steps to be carried out during the study. And there should be a contingency plan based upon a risk assessment of the study in case problems arise. And this is particularly important when working in a facility outside normal working hours, when experienced personnel may not be present. And many of these routines have had to be revised in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Finally, the animal facility itself needs checklists for its operation. There is a good template for this when applying for accreditation by ALAC International, who accredit animal facilities all over the world. I have no financial relationship to ALAC, but I've found this process extremely useful in raising standards at animal facilities. And the template can be used even if the facility does not plan to apply for accreditation. The master plan, the contingency plan, and quality assurance of the animal facility will all necessitate production of checklists, which we refer to as SOPs, or standard operating procedures. In trying to tackle the so-called reproducibility crisis, there's been a lot of talk about better reporting. Good reporting and communication is obviously vital, as we saw in the bird strike incident. But you can't improve a burnt cake by better reporting. You need to go back to the kitchen and change the baking time and all the ingredients. So we need both better design and better reporting in the right order. We've been aware of the poor reporting in scientific literature for as long as I've been in this community, and many guidelines have been developed over the last 40 years. As I've said, they are extremely important, but they cannot solve the problem alone. This infographic from Utrecht University is, in my opinion, a beautiful summary of what is needed. Here we see the role of reporting guidelines, and at the beginning of the path, the PREPARE planning guidelines. PREPARE was published in 2017 under open access and was based on experiences from animal research and dialogue with scientists over a 20-year period. PREPARE consists of 15 main topics covering formulation of the study, dialogue between scientists and the animal facility, and quality assurance of the methods that will be used. The items in pink are those that are not typically highlighted in reporting guidelines, illustrating how planning and reporting guidelines complement each other and serve slightly different purposes. Prepare emphasizes the value of close collaboration between scientists and animal care staff from day one, and there are very good reasons for this. First of all, animal care staff have a right to know and will be more motivated. And they, better than anybody else, know the possibilities and limitations in the animal facility. They possess a large range of practical skills and they're good at lateral thinking. They know the animals best and the animals know them best. And if we don't involve them, this creates anxiety, depression, opposition to animal research, and limits creativity, which might improve the experiments. Prepare consists of two parts. The first is a 2-page checklist with the 15 main topics and subtopics. This is currently available in about 30 languages, with several more in the pipeline. Let me know if you would like a translation to an additional language. There is a lot of focus on the 3 R's in the checklist. The Prepare checklist is currently available in 3 versions: a plain PDF file, a fillable PDF version, which can be stored in a suitable place by the research group, and a shared online version where all members of the group can see which items have been ticked off, but where the text is stored on the user's own computer for security reasons. In addition to the checklist, there are detailed web pages for all the topics and subtopics on the checklist, with links to scientific papers and guidelines. There are also separate tabs for fish researchers, since fish experiments pose so many additional challenges. And these web pages are continuously updated as new resources are published. And Noricorp's newsletters often highlight these new publications. The ARRIVE reporting guidelines have web pages for each topic in a similar fashion, with links to resources. So there are therefore plenty of links from Prepare to ARRIVE at the appropriate places. What do we do if we can't find hard scientific evidence for improving animal research? I personally am a great fan of the 3 S's from Carol Newton, which she mentioned during a discussion at a symposium in Washington in 1975. In addition to good science, which of course we always aim for, we should also use our common sense to evaluate whether a procedure is reasonable. And by good sensibilities, I think she meant we should listen to our heart as well as to our head, and give the animals the benefit of the doubt if a procedure would be painful to us. Carol Newton never published a paper about this concept, so Penny Hawkins and I wrote a paper with our interpretation. You'll find a link to it at the web address on this slide. Finally, I'd like to show you very quickly some of the resources from Noricorp's website, which support the process of planning and conducting research that may involve animal use. Noricorp aims to provide a global overview of resources. Our motto is to prepare for better science, whether that science involves animals or not. We provide a source of global resources, and you're welcome to suggest new resources that should be on these web pages. There are currently nearly 9,000 web pages on the Noricorp website, with a large number of filters that you can use to narrow your search to a manageable number of hits. We also maintain an interactive global map of 3R centers and associations related to laboratory animal science, with a large number of filters here too. And again, please let me know if there are centers that should be added to this map. We also host a detailed webinar and meetings calendar and links to recordings of past meetings that are available. We have published PDF files of about 80 presentations that have been held at Noricorp's scientific meetings. And the whole of the Noricorp website functions as a database with different data sets embedded in it, some from us, some from the European Commission, and from the US National Agricultural Library. There are also links to over 70 other external databases. One of our own databases is called Norina and has information on nearly 3,000 alternatives to animal use in education at all levels, from school dissections through undergraduate training to the needs of scientists and technicians who will be using animals. There are also a lot of links on the site to training modules from other sources. And we have a database of books called TextBase that are related to laboratory animal science. We also have a dataset called 3R Guide, which is a database of over 400 guidelines for animal research and testing that have been collected from all over the world. Noricopa also hosts the website of the International Culture of Care Network, with a large number of practical resources on how to improve culture at an institution. And recently we launched a refinement wiki, where scientists and technicians can publish refinements to animal care, husbandry, and procedures that don't justify a full scientific paper, but which should be better known. The wiki has currently about 60 topics. And again, please contact me if you would like to contribute to this. So I'd like to thank all Noricopa's sponsors who have made this work possible. And as I mentioned, we issue a newsletter 7 or 8 times a year with the latest news about animal research. You can subscribe to this newsletter by using the box at the bottom of Noricopa's web pages. Finally, I'd like to remind you that all these slides are available at noricopa.no/ASAB. Thank you very much for listening.